Welcome to John Carter Stories. The frost cut through my jacket like 1,000 tiny knives, standing there in the darkness, watching my breath turn to ice crystals in the air. I never imagined this would be how my story would begin. 20 degrees below zero, and my own flesh and blood had just looked me dead in the eye and said the words that would haunt me forever. "You're nothing but a burden. Get out." Just 6 months before that frozen night, I'd signed away everything I owned. My home, the 3-bedroom house where memories lived in every corner, where my late wife Sarah had planted roses by the front porch, where my boy Michael had taken his first steps. All of it, gone. Sold to pay off debts that weren't even mine. Michael's gambling debts. The kind of debts that come with men who don't send polite reminder letters, the kind that come with threats, with promises of broken bones and worse. So I did what any father would do. I sacrificed everything to protect my son, walked away from that closing table with nothing but a promise that I could stay with him, that he'd take care of me while I got back on my feet. That promise lasted exactly 183 days. Please subscribe and like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. I'd learned to read the signs over those 6 months, the way Michael's jaw would tighten when he walked through the door, the way his girlfriend Jessica's eyes would dart toward me with that look. You know the one, the look that says you're taking up space that doesn't belong to you, that says you're the problem nobody wanted but got stuck with anyway. Jessica had moved in 3 months into my stay, 29 years old, working at some digital marketing agency, always talking about her career trajectory and 5-year plans. Plans that clearly didn't include a 66-year-old man sleeping in what was supposed to be her home office. That night, December 5th, Michael's truck rumbled into the driveway at 8:15. I was sitting on the worn leather sofa, pretending to read a magazine I'd already gone through twice that week. Through the window, I could see Jessica in the passenger seat, her phone screen illuminating her face in that cold blue light. She was texting someone, probably complaining about me. The front door opened, and the Arctic air rushed in, making my lungs seize up. "Evening," Michael said. Just that one word. Not "Hey, Pop," or "How was your day?" Just my relationship to him, delivered flat and cold. "Evening, son," I managed. "There's leftover pot roast in the kitchen if you're hungry. I made it this afternoon, and we need to talk." He didn't even take off his coat. That's when my stomach dropped. That's when I knew. Jessica came in behind him, stomping snow off her designer boots. "Babe," she said, touching his arm with those perfectly manicured nails, "maybe we should discuss this privately first." They disappeared down the hallway. I could hear them through the walls, her voice urgent and sharp, his lower, more hesitant. I've been a mechanical engineer for 42 years. I understand pressure points. I understand when a structure is about to fail. I could hear both happening in that conversation. 5 minutes later, Michael came back alone. His face had changed. Whatever hesitation had been there before was gone, replaced by something harder, something that looked like his mother's determination, but felt nothing like her kindness. "Pop," he said, standing in the middle of the living room like he needed the distance, "Jessica and we can't keep doing this. We can't afford to support you anymore." The words hit like stones thrown into still water. I felt them sink, heavy and cold, settling somewhere deep in my chest. "Son, I don't eat much," I heard myself say, and I hated how my voice sounded, small, pleading. "I can help more with the bills. My Social Security check is coming, and I can look for work. I'm still capable. I can—" "You're 66 years old." He said it like it was a terminal diagnosis. "I'm healthy. I'm strong. I can still—" "You're a burden." The word landed like a physical blow. Burden, dead weight, something to be discarded. "We need you to leave tonight." The room tilted, or maybe I did. I gripped the arm of the sofa to steady myself. "Michael," I said carefully, forcing my voice to stay level. "It's 20 below zero out there. Can't this wait until morning? Please, just let me—" "No." Jessica had appeared in the hallway, arms crossed, face set. "We've discussed this extensively. We need our space back." I looked past her to my son, my boy, the child I taught to ride a bike, to throw a baseball, to be honest and kind and good. "Michael, please, I gave up my home for you, everything I had. You said you'd—" "I appreciated it, Pop, I really did, but that was 6 months ago. You've had time to figure things out. You need to leave now." "How long do I have?" 10 minutes to pack your things." 10 minutes. 42 years of being a father, of sacrificing, of loving this boy with everything I had, reduced to 10 minutes. I went to the spare bedroom. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grab my clothes. My heavy winter coat, 2 changes of clothes shoved into an old duffel bag Sarah had bought me 20 years ago. My reading glasses. I reached for the photo album on the nightstand. Pictures of Michael as a baby, Sarah holding him, both of them smiling at the camera, smiling at me behind it. But my hands were shaking too hard to hold it. When I came back out, Michael was standing by the front door, holding it open. Arctic air poured in like water through a broken dam. "I'm sorry," he said, still not meeting my eyes. "This is just how it has to be." I walked past him onto the porch. The cold hit me like a wall. Behind me, I heard Jessica's voice, bright and relieved. "Finally, now we can turn that room into my meditation space."
The door slammed shut. The sound echoed across the frozen yard like a gunshot. Sharp, final. The kind of sound that separates before from after. I stood there on the porch, my breath coming out in white clouds that disappeared into the darkness. Through the window, I could see Michael's silhouette. He stood there for just a moment, then reached up and pulled the curtain closed. The porch light clicked off. I walked down the steps, each footfall crunching in the frozen snow. And then it hit me. Not the cold, though God knows that was trying to kill me, but a memory. Michael at 5 years old, wobbling on his first bike in the driveway of the house I'd just sold to save him. Me running alongside, one hand on the seat, keeping him steady. "I got you, buddy," I'd said. "I won't let go until you're ready, I promise." And I hadn't. Not until he was steady. Not until he was safe. Now here I was, 66 years old, standing in 20 below weather, and my son had let go. No, that's not right. My son had pushed. I stood there in the snow, my breath freezing in the air, and realized something that made my chest feel hollow. I had nowhere to go. No money. I'd given Michael everything when I sold the house. He'd been managing my Social Security checks, said he'd put them toward rent and groceries. No plan. No friends in this town I'd moved to just to be close to him. Just the clothes on my back, this duffel bag in my hand, and cold that was already working its way into my bones. They say the human body shuts down after about 3 hours in 20 below temperatures. I had maybe 2 hours before I started losing fingers, maybe 4 before I lost consciousness. I needed shelter, fast. I started walking. Each step crunched in the snow, impossibly loud in the silent December night. My breath froze before my face, creating tiny ice crystals that caught the streetlight. I pulled my coat tighter, but the cold had already worked its way through the fabric, through my shirt, into my skin. 29 below Celsius, 20 below Fahrenheit. Either way you measured it, this was the kind of cold that killed people. My engineer's mind started calculating automatically. Body heat loss rate in sub-zero conditions, wind chill factor with these gusts, time until hypothermia onset. The numbers marched through my head like soldiers, cold, precise, terrifying. The church was 3 blocks away. I could see its white steeple rising against the dark sky, that cross on top catching the moonlight. Reverend Daniel Foster had been preaching there for 16 years. I'd attended services when Sarah was still alive, back when Michael was small and we were still a family. But I kept walking past it. Pride, maybe. Or shame. or just the certainty that the Reverend would look at me with that particular expression, the one that said he was judging my failures while offering false comfort. The church helped people, sure, but the right kind of people, the deserving poor, not old men who'd somehow lost everything, including their own son's love. My fingers were going numb. I flexed them inside my gloves, trying to keep blood flowing. The duffel bag pulled at my shoulder, getting heavier with each step. The motel appeared another block down, the Riverside Inn, its neon sign flickering, VACY. I'd driven past it countless times, never imagining I'd be desperate enough to need it. I stopped at the entrance, looking through the glass door at the small lobby. $35 a night, according to the sign posted in the window. $35 I didn't have. I kept walking. Margaret Sullivan's grocery store was dark, but there was a light on in the apartment above it. Margaret was about my age, a widow who'd run that store for 18 years. She knew everyone in town. She'd known Sarah. She'd known Michael as a boy. I stood across the street, looking up at that light. All I had to do was cross over, knock on her door, explain. Margaret was kind. She would help. But the shame felt as cold and heavy as the air around me. To knock on that door would mean saying the words out loud. My son threw me out. I have nothing. Please help. I couldn't do it. So I turned away from Margaret's light and kept walking toward the edge of town, where the streetlights ended and the old railway yard began. My face had gone completely numb. I couldn't feel my cheeks or nose. My ears burned with cold so intense it felt like fire. Each breath was agony, the frozen air searing my lungs. The engineer in me was still calculating. 45 minutes of walking now. At this temperature, with this wind chill, I had maybe 90 minutes before real damage started, before frostbite became inevitable, before my body began shutting down. I needed shelter. Not in an hour. Now. The railway yard spread out before me, a maze of tracks and forgotten equipment silhouetted against the night sky. In summer, it bustled with activity. Freight trains, workers shouting, machinery clanging. But now, in the dead of winter, at 9:30 at night, it was empty, silent, abandoned. Just like me. Then I saw it, a dim security light casting a weak orange glow across the snow. And beneath it, shapes, old boxcars lined up on forgotten sidings, covered in rust and graffiti, decommissioned, forgotten. I spent 42 years as a mechanical engineer, designed ventilation systems, calculated load-bearing capacities, built things that lasted. That night, I became something else. An old man breaking into an abandoned boxcar just to survive until morning. What happens when a man who's lost everything finds himself with one final chance? Will the abandoned boxcar become his tomb or his salvation? Stay with me to find out what happened next.
The metal was so cold it burned when I touched it. I stood there at the edge of that boxcar, one hand pressed against the steel frame, trying to catch my breath. My legs were shaking from exhaustion and cold. The walk from Michael's house to this forgotten corner of the railway yard had taken everything I had left. But I was here, and I was still alive. I forced myself to look at the boxcar with an engineer's eye, not a desperate man's hope. Steel frame, good, solid. Wooden slat walls with gaps between them, not ideal but workable. The Union Pacific logo was so faded I could barely make it out, which meant this car had been sitting here for years, maybe decades. The sliding door was partially open, maybe 2 feet. I grabbed the handle and pulled. Nothing. I pulled harder, leaning back with all my weight. The door groaned but didn't move. Rust had welded it to the frame. Ice had filled the track. "Come on," I whispered through numb lips. "Come on, please." I planted my feet in the snow, gripped that handle with both hands, and pulled with everything I had left. For a moment, nothing.
Then, with a shriek of protesting metal that seemed loud enough to wake the whole town, the door jerked forward 6 inches along its track. I rested there, breathing hard, my breath forming clouds in the freezing air. 6 inches wasn't enough. I couldn't fit through 6 inches. I pulled again. This time the door moved more easily, screaming along its frozen track until the opening was wide enough for me to squeeze through. I stood there, looking into the absolute darkness inside. That opening felt like a mouth ready to swallow me whole. But I was out of options, out of time. I grabbed my duffel bag and climbed inside. The darkness was complete. Not the normal darkness of a room at night, but the kind that exists in sealed spaces where no light has touched in years. It felt solid, pressing against my eyes. The smell hit me next. Old wood, rust, something musty and ancient. But underneath that, and this mattered more than anything, I smelled nothing organic. No animal waste, no decomposition, no sign that anything living had been here recently. That was good. I fumbled in my coat pocket for the box of matches I'd grabbed from Michael's kitchen, one of the few things I'd managed to take during those 10 minutes. My fingers were so numb I almost dropped the box. On the 3rd try, I got a match out and struck it. The tiny flame flared to life, impossibly bright after that absolute darkness. I held it up, turning slowly, taking in what would be my new home. The boxcar was maybe 30 feet long, 8 feet wide. Wooden floor, dirty but solid. Steel walls with wooden slats, gaps between them where I could see strips of night sky. Snow had drifted in through those gaps near the door, but the far end looked dry. The ceiling was intact, that was crucial. I could see rust spots where moisture had gotten in over the years, but there was no active leak. No snow on the floor at the back meant the roof was holding. The walls would block most of the wind. The roof would keep off the snow. With the door partially closed, this space would hold some body heat. I could survive here. Maybe not comfortably, maybe not for long, but I could survive tonight. The match burned down to my fingers and I dropped it, letting darkness rush back in. I made my way carefully toward the back corner, the driest spot, my feet shuffling across the wooden floor. I sat down with my back against the cold metal wall, pulled my duffel bag close, and wrapped my arms around myself. My whole body shook uncontrollably now that I'd stopped moving, but I was out of the wind. The temperature inside the boxcar was still far below freezing, but it was maybe 10 degrees warmer than outside. 10 degrees that might mean the difference between life and death. I closed my eyes, though it made no difference in the darkness. My mind kept replaying it. Michael's face, cold and certain. Jessica's voice, "We need that room." The sound of the door slamming. The long walk through the freezing night. The desperate search for somewhere, anywhere. And now here I was, 66 years old, sitting in an abandoned boxcar in the middle of winter. No money, no home, nothing but the clothes on my back and a duffel bag. But I was alive. I sat there in that darkness, back against the frigid wall, and made myself a promise. I would not die here. I would survive this. And somehow, some way, I would prove that I wasn't worthless. I didn't know how yet. I just knew I had to try. I woke to frost on my eyebrows. That's what I remember most about that first morning. Not the cold, though God knows it was cold. Not the hunger or the fear, just that frost. Tiny crystals that crunched when I touched them. Proof that my body had stayed warm enough through the night to create condensation, to create moisture, to stay alive. Small victories, right? That's what you learn to celebrate when everything else is gone. The sun was just starting to come up, these thin strips of light, more gray than gold, really, sneaking through the gaps in the walls. I could finally see where I was, what I'd gotten myself into. I didn't move right away. Couldn't, actually. Every part of me hurt.
But I did what I always do, what 42 years as an engineer taught me to do. I took inventory. Fingers, I wiggled them. They moved. Hurt like hell, but they moved. Toes, same thing. Burning, aching, but there. All 10 of them as far as I could tell. I'd made it. One night down. I know how that sounds, one night, like it's nothing. But when you're 66 years old, sitting in an abandoned boxcar at 20 below zero, one night is everything. I stood up slowly. Fast wasn't an option, and I really looked at the place. In the matchlight the night before, I'd seen the basics. Steel frame, wooden walls, roof intact. But now, with daylight, I could see the problems. Those gaps between the wall slats, wind was pouring through them. I could feel it on my face, my hands. Every bit of warmth my body tried to make just disappeared through those gaps. I needed to fix that.
The metal was so cold it burned when I touched it. I stood there at the edge of that boxcar, one hand pressed against the steel frame, trying to catch my breath. My legs were shaking from exhaustion and cold. The walk from Michael's house to this forgotten corner of the railway yard had taken everything I had left. But I was here, and I was still alive. I forced myself to look at the boxcar with an engineer's eye, not a desperate man's hope. Steel frame, good, solid. Wooden slat walls with gaps between them, not ideal but workable. The Union Pacific logo was so faded I could barely make it out, which meant this car had been sitting here for years, maybe decades. The sliding door was partially open, maybe 2 feet. I grabbed the handle and pulled. Nothing. I pulled harder, leaning back with all my weight. The door groaned but didn't move. Rust had welded it to the frame. Ice had filled the track. "Come on," I whispered through numb lips. "Come on, please." I planted my feet in the snow, gripped that handle with both hands, and pulled with everything I had left. For a moment, nothing. Then, with a shriek of protesting metal that seemed loud enough to wake the whole town, the door jerked forward 6 inches along its track. I rested there, breathing hard, my breath forming clouds in the freezing air. 6 inches wasn't enough. I couldn't fit through 6 inches. I pulled again. This time the door moved more easily, screaming along its frozen track until the opening was wide enough for me to squeeze through. I stood there, looking into the absolute darkness inside. That opening felt like a mouth ready to swallow me whole. But I was out of options, out of time. I grabbed my duffel bag and climbed inside. The darkness was complete. Not the normal darkness of a room at night, but the kind that exists in sealed spaces where no light has touched in years. It felt solid, pressing against my eyes. The smell hit me next. Old wood, rust, something musty and ancient. But underneath that, and this mattered more than anything, I smelled nothing organic. No animal waste, no decomposition, no sign that anything living had been here recently. That was good. I fumbled in my coat pocket for the box of matches I'd grabbed from Michael's kitchen, one of the few things I'd managed to take during those 10 minutes. My fingers were so numb I almost dropped the box. On the 3rd try, I got a match out and struck it. The tiny flame flared to life, impossibly bright after that absolute darkness. I held it up, turning slowly, taking in what would be my new home. The boxcar was maybe 30 feet long, 8 feet wide. Wooden floor, dirty but solid. Steel walls with wooden slats, gaps between them where I could see strips of night sky. Snow had drifted in through those gaps near the door, but the far end looked dry. The roof was intact. That was crucial. I could see rust spots where moisture had gotten in over the years, but there was no active leak. No snow on the floor at the back meant the roof was holding. The walls would block most of the wind. The roof would keep off the snow, With the door partially closed, this space would hold some body heat. I could survive here. Maybe not comfortably, maybe not for long, but I could survive tonight. The match burned down to my fingers, and I dropped it, letting darkness rush back in. I made my way carefully toward the back corner, the driest spot, my feet shuffling across the wooden floor. I sat down with my back against the cold metal wall, pulled my duffel bag close, and wrapped my arms around myself. My whole body shook uncontrollably now that I'd stopped moving. But I was out of the wind. The temperature inside the boxcar was still far below freezing, but it was maybe 10 degrees warmer than outside. 10 degrees that might mean the difference between life and death. I closed my eyes, though it made no difference in the darkness. My mind kept replaying it. Michael's face, cold and certain. Jessica's voice, "We need that room." The sound of the door slamming. The long walk through the freezing night. The desperate search for somewhere, anywhere. And now here I was, 66 years old, sitting in an abandoned boxcar in the middle of winter. No money, no home, nothing but the clothes on my back and a duffel bag. But I was alive. I sat there in that darkness, back against the frigid wall, and made myself a promise. I would not die here. I would survive this, and somehow, some way, I would prove that I wasn't worthless. I didn't know how yet. I just knew I had to try. I woke to frost on my eyebrows. That's what I remember most about that first morning. Not the cold, though God knows it was cold. Not the hunger or the fear. Just that frost. Tiny crystals that crunched when I touched them. Proof that my body had stayed warm enough through the night to create condensation, to create moisture, to stay alive. Small victories, right? That's what you learn to celebrate when everything else is gone. The sun was just starting to come up, these thin strips of light, more gray than gold, really, sneaking through the gaps in the walls. I could finally see where I was, what I'd gotten myself into. I didn't move right away, couldn't actually. Every part of me hurt. But I did what I always do, what 42 years as an engineer taught me to do. I took inventory. Fingers. I wiggled them. They moved. Hurt like hell, but they moved. Toes. Same thing. Burning, aching, but there. All 10 of them as far as I could tell. I'd made it. One night down. I know how that sounds. One night like it's nothing. But when you're 66 years old, sitting in an abandoned boxcar at 20 below, one night is everything. I stood up slowly. Fast wasn't an option, and I really looked at the place. In the matchlight the night before, I'd seen the basics. Steel frame, wooden walls, roof intact. But now, with daylight, I could see the problems. Those gaps between the wall slats. Wind was pouring through them. I could feel it on my face, my hands. Every bit of warmth my body tried to make just disappeared through those gaps. I needed to fix that.
I tossed it to him. He flinched when it landed, like he thought it might hurt him. Then he sniffed it once, twice. He ate it so fast I barely saw his mouth move. I tossed him another piece, and another, until the bread was gone. Then he did something I wasn't expecting. He crawled forward, just a few inches, but forward, and he licked my hand, once, quick, like he was testing whether I was real. "Yeah," I said. My throat felt tight. "Yeah, okay, you can come with me." I mean, what else was I going to do? Leave him there to freeze? To starve? We were in the same boat, him and me, both thrown away, both trying to survive. "Come on," I said, standing up. "Let's get you somewhere warm." He followed me, hesitant, limping on his back left leg. I hadn't noticed that before, but he followed. The walk back to the boxcar took forever. I had to stop every few minutes because the dog,
I started calling him Copper in my head because of that golden fur. Couldn't keep up. But he kept trying. That's what got me. He kept trying. When we got to the boxcar, I lifted him inside first. He was so light, couldn't have been more than 30 pounds. Should have been 50 at least. I climbed in after him with all my scavenged materials. Copper stood in the middle of the space, looking around, his nose working overtime, taking in all the smells. I used some of the fabric scraps to make him a bed. Nothing fancy, just softer than bare wood, warmer. "There," I said, "that's yours." He circled it 3 times, like dogs do, I guess, and then he lay down, let out this long sigh, the kind that says, "I'm tired all the way to my bones." I worked on insulating the walls while he slept, stuffing newspaper into the gaps, layering the burlap sacks. Not perfect, not even close, but better. The sun was going down by the time I finished. The temperature was dropping fast. I settled into my corner with my coat wrapped tight around me. My stomach was growling something fierce now. That bread I'd given away had seemed right at the time, but now? Copper lifted his head, looked at me. Then he got up, slow, careful, and he walked over to where I was sitting. He pressed himself against my side, his body warm, alive. "Thanks, buddy," I whispered. That night, with Copper curled up next to me, sharing body heat, I slept better than I had in weeks. Even in Michael's house I hadn't slept that well, because there I'd been alone, really alone. But now I had company. I woke up once, middle of the night. Copper's breathing was steady against me. And I thought, for the first time since Michael locked that door, I'm not completely alone anymore. That thought let me fall back asleep. When I woke again, it was to a sound that made my blood run cold. Footsteps outside the boxcar, heavy boots, deliberate, official. The footsteps of someone with authority.
James Peterson wasn't a bad man. He was just doing his job. But when he told me I had 48 hours to leave or pay $8 a week, he might as well have handed me a death sentence. The knock came at dawn. Not gentle, not tentative. The kind of knock that says, "I have authority and I'm using it." I jolted awake. Copper was already on his feet, that low growl rumbling in his chest. For a second, just a second, I thought maybe Michael had come back. Maybe he'd changed his mind. But no, the voice that came through the metal was unfamiliar. "Hello? Anyone in there? This is railroad property." My heart was hammering. Railroad property. Right. Of course it was. I hadn't thought about that part. Or maybe I had and I'd ignored it, because what choice did I have? I stood up, every joint aching from another night on that hard floor. "Just a minute," I called out. Copper looked at me. I looked at him. "Stay quiet," I said softly. "Good boy." I slid the door open, maybe a foot, just enough to see who was out there. A man, mid-40s, I'd guess, railroad uniform with the company logo stitched on the chest, clipboard in one hand, flashlight in the other, even though the sun was coming up. Behind him, I could see his truck parked on the access road. "Morning," he said. Not unkind, just official. "I'm James Peterson, railroad inspector. And you are?" "Harold," I said. Didn't give him my last name. Don't know why. "Harold Mitchell." "Mr. Mitchell," he nodded, looked past me into the boxcar. "Mind if I ask what you're doing in there?" I could have lied. Could have said I was just passing through, fell asleep, didn't mean anything by it. But I was tired, so damn tired, and I didn't have the energy for lies. "I'm going through some difficulties," I said. Kept my voice steady. Didn't mention Michael. Didn't mention any of it.
I needed somewhere to stay, temporarily. James' expression didn't change much. He'd probably heard stories like mine before, or worse. "I see," he said. He glanced past me again. This time his eyes caught on something. The newspapers I'd stuffed in the wall gaps, probably. The burlap sacks. "You've been doing some work in there." "Yes, sir." What else could I say? He wrote something on his clipboard. Then he looked back at me. "Mr. Mitchell, I understand you're in a tough spot. I do. But this is railroad property. Specifically, it belongs to Northern Montana Rail, and you're trespassing." There it was, the word I'd been waiting for. Trespassing. I nodded, didn't argue, because he was right. "Now," continued James, "I could call the sheriff right now, have you removed." He paused, looked at me closer, at my worn coat, my hollow cheeks. "But I'm not going to do that." Something in my chest loosened, just a little. "You've got two options," he said. "You can leave within 48 hours, pack up, move on, and we'll consider this matter closed." He checked his clipboard. "Or you can pay rent, $8 a week." $8. I stared at him. $8 might as well have been 800, 8,000. "I don't have that right now," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, small. James nodded slowly, like he'd expected that answer. "Then I'm sorry, Mr. Mitchell, but you'll need to leave. 48 hours. That's the regulation." 48 hours. 2 days. Back out into the cold. Back to what? The church basement? The streets? Another abandoned building until someone kicked me out of that one too? "I understand," I heard myself say. James tucked his pen behind his ear, started to turn away. Then he stopped. "That insulation work," he said, nodding toward the boxcar. "That's good craftsmanship. Most people wouldn't know how to do that properly. Keep the heat in without creating a condensation problem." I blinked. "I was an engineer, mechanical engineer." "Yeah?" Something shifted in his face. Not quite respect, but recognition, maybe. "Well, you did good work," he said. He walked back to his truck. I watched him go, watched him drive away down the access road until the truck disappeared around the curve. Then I turned and looked at the boxcar, my home for 2 more days. Copper was sitting in the doorway, head tilted, watching me. "It's okay, boy," I said, but my voice cracked a little. I climbed back inside and sat down. My mind was spinning. $8 a week. How was I supposed to come up with $8 a week? I had no job, no prospects, no one who'd hire a 66-year-old man that smelled like a railway yard and slept in a boxcar. But if I didn't find a way, if I couldn't come up with that money, I'd be back out in the cold, and this time I might not survive it. I looked down at my hands, these hands that designed complex machinery, these hands that held Sarah when she was dying, these hands that taught Michael to ride a bike, these hands that built a whole career, a whole life, and now they had to figure out how to earn $8 a week.
If they couldn't, I'd be right back where I started, out in that killing cold. Only this time, I'd have Copper to worry about too. The dog pressed against my leg, warm, trusting. "We'll figure it out," I told him. I just didn't know how yet. Pride is a luxury you can't afford when you're hungry. I learned that the day I stood outside Margaret Sullivan's grocery store and tried to work up the courage to go inside and ask for work, any work. I stood there for maybe 10 minutes, just stood there, looking at the door, looking at my boots, looking at the door again. People walked past me. Some I recognized, some didn't. A few nodded, most didn't. And I thought,
This is what I've become. An old man loitering outside a grocery store trying to decide if he's brave enough to beg for a job. Not brave, that's not the word. Desperate, that's the word. I pushed the door open. The bell above it rang, one of those cheerful little chimes that's supposed to make you feel welcome. It made me feel like everyone in the store was looking at me, and maybe they were, or maybe that was just in my head. Margaret Sullivan was behind the counter, late 50s, I'd guess. Gray hair pulled back in a practical bun, glasses on a chain around her neck. She looked up when I came in. "Harold Mitchell?" she said. Not a question, just recognition. "Mrs. Sullivan," my throat was dry. "I was wondering if you might have any work I could do. Repairs, hauling, anything. I'm in a difficult situation right now." She studied me, not unkindly, just assessing, the way you might look at a piece of furniture you're thinking about buying. "I heard," she said finally, "that you're staying in that old boxcar out by the rail yard." No point lying. Small town, people talk. "Yes, ma'am," I said, temporarily. Her expression softened a little. Not pity, something else. Understanding, maybe. "I've got some shelving in the back that needs fixing. Been meaning to get to it for weeks. And the back door hinge is broken, won't close properly. You able to handle that kind of work?" "Yes, ma'am." Relief flooded through me, made my knees weak. "I can do that." She nodded. "Tools are in the storage room. Help yourself." I worked for the next 4 hours, maybe 5, lost track of time. The shelves first. They were sagging in the middle. Too much weight, not enough support. Basic engineering problem. I reinforced the brackets, redistributed the load. Took about an hour. The door hinge was trickier. Rusted through. I couldn't replace it, didn't have the parts, but I could jury-rig something that would hold. Used some wire, a piece of scrap metal I found in the alley. Not pretty, but functional. Then I reorganized the back storage room. Hadn't been asked to, just did it. Grouped items by category, heavier things on bottom shelves, made sense. Margaret came back to check on me around 6. The light outside was starting to fade. She looked at the shelves, the door, the storage room. "Well," she said, "you do good work, Mr. Mitchell." "Thank you, ma'am." She pulled out her wallet, counted out $3 bills, held them out to me. $3. I still needed 5 more to make 8, but 3 was something. It was hope. "And this," Margaret said. She handed me a paper bag, full of groceries, bread, cheese, some canned goods, an apple. I started to protest. "Mrs. Sullivan, I can't—" "They're past their sell date," she said, matter of fact. "I was going to throw them out anyway." I looked at the apple. It was perfect, not a bruise on it. Looked at the bread, fresh, still soft. She was lying, kindly, but lying. "Thank you," I said. My voice came out rough. "Truly, thank you." She nodded. "You need more work, you come back. I can always use help with inventory, restocking, things like that." "Yes, ma'am, I will." I left before my voice could crack again. Outside, I counted my money as I walked. $3 for Margaret, plus the 42 cents I'd had in my pocket since Michael's house. $3.42. I needed $8 a week, which meant I needed $4.58 more by the day after tomorrow. 36 hours. The math kept running through my head as I walked. Where else could I find work? Who else might hire me for a day, an afternoon, an hour? The sun was setting when I got back to the rail yard. Sky all pink and orange, beautiful, cold. I was thinking about how I'd share the food with Copper. The bread, definitely, maybe some of the cheese. Then I rounded the corner and saw them. Someone standing by my boxcar, just standing there, waiting.
I stopped. My heart did that thing again where it forgets how to beat properly. Because I recognized them. Recognized the shape, the stance. A person I'd hoped I'd never have to see again.
Patricia Dawson had made a career out of other people's misery. And my situation, a 66-year-old man living in a boxcar, was premium material for gossip. She was standing maybe 20 feet from my boxcar when I got back, just standing there, looking at it like it was something fascinating and disgusting at the same time, like a car accident you can't help but stare at. I recognized her immediately. Hard not to. Patricia Dawson, wife of the hardware store owner. 52, maybe 53, always dressed like she was going somewhere important, even when she was just going to the post office. And she talked. God, did she talk. She turned when she heard my footsteps. Her eyes went wide, not with surprise, with delight. The kind of delight people get when they've stumbled onto something they can turn into a story. "Harold Mitchell," she said, like she couldn't quite believe it. "My word, you're actually living here?" I stopped a few feet away. The bag of groceries from Margaret felt suddenly heavy in my hand. "Mrs. Dawson," I said, kept my voice polite, careful. "Can I help you with something?" "Help you?" she laughed. Not a nice laugh. "Oh no, dear, I'm just shocked is all. I mean, I'd heard rumors, but I didn't believe them. Living in a boxcar, like some kind of vagrant." Vagrant, that's the word she used. I didn't say anything, just tried to move past her toward the door. "Does Michael know?" she asked, actually following me. "Does your son know you're living like this? That poor boy must be mortified. What did you do to make him throw you out?" I stopped, turned around. "Mrs. Dawson," I said. My voice came out flat, tired. "I'm exhausted. Please excuse me." Her expression shifted. Offense, like I'd insulted her somehow. "Well," she said, "I'm just trying to understand, Harold. People will talk, you know. They'll want to know what kind of person ends up living in a boxcar." I looked at her, really looked at her clean coat, her styled hair, her judgment. "Let them talk," I said. I opened the boxcar door. Copper was there immediately, standing at the threshold, that low growl rumbling in his chest. He didn't like her. Smart dog. Patricia took a step back. "And you're keeping a mangy dog, too? Figures. That's just the kind of person who—" I didn't let her finish. Stepped inside with Copper, slid the door shut. Her voice was still going on the other side, muffled now, but still going. Something about disgrace and setting a bad example, and what would people think. I sat down, my back against the wall. Copper pressed against my leg. My hands were shaking, not from cold, from anger, from shame, from the effort of not shouting at her, not telling her to mind her own damn business, not explaining that her precious hardware store owner husband had propositioned Sarah at a church social 15 years ago, and I'd never told anyone, because what was the point? I didn't know her my story, didn't know her anything. But I knew what was coming. By tomorrow, I said to Copper, by tomorrow noon, everyone in town would know, and they'd all have opinions. He looked up at me with those brown eyes, licked my hand like he was saying it's okay, like he didn't care what anyone thought. "Yeah," I said, "yeah, you're right." I shared the bread and cheese with him. We ate in silence, the apple I saved for morning. Outside, I could hear Patricia's footsteps finally walking away, back to town, back to her husband and her phone and her circle of friends who loved nothing more than picking apart someone else's life. I tried not to think about it, tried to focus on what mattered, the $3.42 in my pocket, the fact that I still needed $4.58 more, that I had 30 hours left to find it. But my mind kept drifting to tomorrow, to walking into town for work, to the looks, the whispers, the way people would suddenly remember they had somewhere else to be when they saw me coming. I'd been through worse, lost Sarah, lost my home, lost Michael. I could handle gossip, couldn't I? I lay down that night with Copper curled up next to me.
The boxcar was warmer now with the insulation I'd added. Not comfortable, but survivable. I stared at the ceiling, at the rusted metal panels catching moonlight through the gaps. And I thought about dignity, about what it means, whether it's something you have or something you choose. I chose it right then. Whatever Patricia Dawson said about me, whatever the town thought, I'd keep choosing it. I was right about the timing, though. By noon the next day, I'd become the town's favorite topic of conversation, and not in any way that made my life easier.
The knock came mid-morning, different from James Peterson's knock. This one was gentler, patient. I opened the door, expecting trouble. Instead, I found an old man, white beard, face weathered like driftwood, holding a beat-up metal toolbox that looked older than I was. "Heard you were living here," he said. No judgment in his voice, just fact. "Thought you might could use some help." I stared at him. "I don't know you, sir." "Walter Hayes." He held out his hand. I shook it. His grip was still strong. "Worked for the railroad 43 years before my body gave out. I know boxcars." I didn't know what to say to that. So I stepped back, let him in. He climbed inside with surprising agility for a man his age, set his toolbox down, then he stood there, hands on his hips, looking around. "Not bad for a first try," he said finally, "but you're doing a few things wrong." I bristled a little at that, couldn't help it. "Wrong? See that?" He pointed at the burlap sacks I'd stuffed into the wall gaps. "You're packing them too tight. Air needs space to hold heat. You want 'em loose, then layer newspaper over top." I looked at the burlap, then back at him. He was right. Of course he was right. Basic thermodynamics. I'd been so focused on blocking the wind that I'd forgotten about trapped air being the real insulator. "Oh," I said. Felt stupid. "Yeah, you're right." Walter smiled. Not mean, just understanding. "You're an engineer, aren't you? I can tell. Engineers always try to overthink things." "I'm mechanical engineer," I admitted. "Retired." "Thought so." He opened his toolbox. "Come on, I'll show you." For the next few hours, Walter taught me things I should have known but didn't, things about surviving in a boxcar that you only learn by actually doing it. How to properly insulate, loose material, air pockets, then a vapor barrier, that's your newspaper, to stop condensation. How to build a fire pit that wouldn't burn through the floor. Wood will scorch through eventually, need a metal sheet underneath, and bricks if you can get 'em, something that'll hold the heat but not conduct it straight to the floor. How to create cross-ventilation without letting all the heat escape. Smoke needs a way out, but you don't want wind blowing straight through. See, you need baffles, indirect airflow. Where to find coal. Freight cars drop chunks when they're loading. Check near the tracks. Good stuff. Burns hotter and longer than wood. We worked together. 2 engineers. One young in spirit, one old in body, solving a problem the way engineers do, with logic, with practical solutions, with our hands. Walter told me stories while we worked, about living in boxcars himself during the Depression, about winters so cold the metal would crack, about the tricks you learn when your life depends on it. You marry good materials with good technique, and you can survive damn near anything. "I don't know how to thank you," I said at one point, my throat tight again. It seemed to happen a lot lately. Walter waved a hand. "Don't need thanks. I see it in your eyes. You're a fighter. You'll make it through." "I'm not so sure about that." "I am." He looked at me, really looked at me. "You know what the difference is between people who survive and people who don't? It ain't strength. It ain't luck. It's stubbornness. And mister, you got stubborn written all over you." I laughed. First real laugh I'd had in, God, I couldn't remember how long.
When the work was done, when the boxcar was properly insulated, when the fire pit was safe and functional, when I understood how to keep myself alive through the rest of winter, Walter closed up his toolbox. "Here," he said, pushing it toward me. "Consider this a loan. Give it back when you're on your feet." "Walter, I can't." "You can. You will." He climbed out of the boxcar, stood there in the doorway, silhouetted against the afternoon sun. "You come by my place if you need anything else. Address is in the toolbox. Little note inside the lid." "Why are you helping me?" The question came out before I could stop it. Walter smiled. Sad. "Because 35 years ago, I was you, and someone helped me. That's how it works, son. We help each other." He walked away before I could say anything else. Just walked away, back towards town. An old man with a limp and a good heart. I looked at the toolbox, opened the lid. Sure enough, there was a note. Address, and underneath it, in shaky handwriting, "You're stronger than you think." I sat down. Copper came over, pressed his head against my knee. The boxcar was warmer now. Really warmer. Walter's work had made a real difference. The gaps were properly sealed. The fire pit was safe. I had a chance now. A real chance. But I still had $3.42 in my pocket. I still needed $4.58 more. And James Peterson would be here any minute to collect.
I pulled out what I had, held it toward him. "I know it's not enough, but if you could give me one more week, just one more week, I think I can—" "Stop." He held up a hand, closed his eyes for a second. "Just stop." The silence stretched. I could hear my own heartbeat, hear Copper breathing somewhere behind me in the boxcar. James looked at me, then at the money, then back at the boxcar. "I have a daughter," he said, quiet, like he was telling me a secret. "Emma, she's 8 years old." I didn't understand, didn't know what to say, so I waited. If something happened to me, his voice got rougher, if my wife and I were gone, if Emma ended up like you are now, alone, with nowhere to go, I'd hope to God someone would show her mercy. My throat went tight, couldn't breathe right. "Keep your money, Mr. Mitchell." He said it firm, final. "You've got until Friday, next Friday. Can you manage that?" I nodded, couldn't speak yet. "Good." He started to turn, stopped. "This boxcar? It's built better than most houses I've seen. You should be proud of that." "I had help," I managed. "Walter Hayes." Something shifted in James's expression, almost a smile. "Walter's the best of us. Listen to him." Then he walked to his truck, climbed in, drove away. I stood there, couldn't move, couldn't breathe, like I'd been hit in the chest with something heavy and sharp. Then my legs just gave out. I sat down hard on the floor, right there in the doorway. Copper came over immediately, pushed his head into my chest. I wrapped my arms around him and I just held on. Because this was mercy, real mercy, the kind you don't earn, the kind someone gives you because they choose to see you as human instead of as a problem to solve. And I didn't know what to do with that. My whole life I'd earned things, worked for them, proved I deserved them. But this, James had looked at me, at this pathetic old man living in a boxcar, and he'd chosen kindness over regulation, humanity over policy. Why? Because of an 8-year-old girl he was terrified might one day need the same thing. I buried my face in Copper's fur, let myself feel it. The fear that had been crushing my chest for days, the relief that made my hands shake, the overwhelming weight of being seen, of being given a chance. "We got a week," I whispered to Copper. "1 week to prove we deserve it." He licked my face like he was saying, "You already do." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe James was right, that I'd built something here worth keeping, that I was more than what Michael had said I was, more than what Patricia Dawson was telling the whole town. But believing it and proving it were two different things. I spent that evening organizing what I had, the tools Walter had loaned me, the supplies I'd scavenged, the small store of coal I'd found by the tracks. Everything had its place now. Everything had purpose. The boxcar was warmer than Michael's house had ever been. Not just temperature, something else, something I'd built with my own hands. But warmth doesn't pay rent. And I knew that when I walked into town tomorrow, people would be watching, waiting, some hoping I'd succeed, most expecting me to fail, because that's what small towns do. They watch, they judge, they place bets on your life and wait to see if they called it right. I had 1 week to prove them wrong, 1 week to find enough work that people would look past the gossip, past the shame, past the man living in a boxcar, and see what? An engineer? A father? Someone worth hiring? I didn't know if I could do it, but I knew this. Failing wasn't just about losing the boxcar. It was about proving Michael right, proving Patricia Dawson right, proving to myself that everything I'd thought I was, everything I'd built in 42 years of work, had been wrong all along. I couldn't let that happen. I looked at Copper, curled up by the fire pit now, content, trusting. "Tomorrow we start over," I told him. "Tomorrow we show them." He opened one eye, looked at me, closed it again. Yeah, he had the right idea. 1 day at a time, 1 job at a time, $1 at a time. 7 days to build a life. I could do that. I had to.
Being invisible is lonely, but being visible and ignored, that's a special kind of torture. I learned that over the next 4 days. 4 days of walking through town, 4 days of knocking on doors, 4 days of watching people look at me, really look at me, and then decide I wasn't worth their time. Day 1, the hardware store first. Made sense, right? I knew tools, new repairs, new building. The owner was restocking shelves when I walked in. He looked up, saw me. His expression changed. Not hostile, just closed. "Morning, Harold." "Morning, Richard." I kept my voice steady, professional. "I saw you had a help wanted sign. I'm available if you need someone." "Sorry, Harold." He said it fast, too fast. "Position's been filled." I looked at the window. The sign was still there. Big letters. Help wanted. "Oh," I said. "Must have just happened." "Yeah, just this morning." We both knew he was lying. I could see it in his face. He could see that I knew. "Well," I tried to smile. "Thanks anyway." I walked out. The sign stayed in the window. Day 2, the diner at lunchtime. Busy, loud. The manager was hauling plates when I caught her attention. "We need younger staff," she said. Didn't even let me finish asking. "Sorry, nothing personal." I was 66, not 90. I could lift, could work, could move. "I understand," I said anyway. Later that afternoon, the gas station. I was halfway across the lot when the owner saw me coming. He looked right at me, shook his head once, then turned and walked back inside his shop. Didn't even let me ask. I stood there in the cold, watched my breath cloud in the air, felt something inside me start to crack. Day 3. I was walking through the town square when I heard them. Young voices, laughing. "Hey, Boxcar Harold." I didn't turn around, kept walking. "Yo, Harold, find any good trash today?" Dennis Dawson, 23 years old, never held a job longer than 2 months. His father owned a hardware store, Patricia's son. The kid had his mother's mouth and his father's mean streak. More laughter, his friends joining in. I kept walking. "My mom says you must have done something really bad," Dennis called after me, "for your own kid to throw you out like that." My hands clenched. Kept walking. Their laughter followed me 3 blocks. Later, later, I was near the church when Reverend Foster stepped out, like he'd been waiting. "Harold." He had that voice, the one that sounds concerned but isn't. "I've heard about your situation. Reverend, perhaps this is a time for reflection." He touched my shoulder. I wanted to pull away. "A time to consider the choices that brought you here. I just need work, Reverend. Because sometimes hardship is God's way of teaching humility." His voice got softer,
more pitying, worse. "Have you considered examining what led you to this place?" I looked at him, really looked at him, in his warm coat, his clean collar, his certain righteousness. "I examine that every night, Reverend," I said, quiet. "In the cold, I examine it plenty." I walked away before he could say anything else. Day 4. I'd been avoiding it, taking longer routes, going blocks out of my way. But I was tired, so tired, and it was the shortest path back, so I walked past Michael's house. I didn't mean to stop, didn't mean to look, but there were lights in the windows, smoke from the chimney, warmth, home, everything I used to have. I saw movement inside, a shadow crossing past the window. Michael. He turned, saw me standing there in the street. For 1 second, just one, I thought he might come out, might say something, might, I don't know, acknowledge I existed. Instead, his face went hard, cold. He reached up and pulled the curtain shut, just like that, closed me out, closed me away. I stood there, couldn't move, couldn't breathe, like I'd been hit in the chest with something heavy and sharp. Another window, movement. Jessica's face appeared. She looked at me, right at me. She smiled. Then she turned away, laughing. I could see her mouth moving, talking to Michael, probably about me, about the pathetic old man standing in the street, staring at his son's house like some kind of ghost.
My legs finally moved, got me walking, got me away from there. I don't remember the walk back to the boxcar. Don't remember opening the door. Don't remember climbing inside. But I remember sitting down on the floor. I remember Copper coming over, whining, licking my face like he was trying to fix something that couldn't be fixed. And I remember putting my arms around him and crying, really crying, for the first time since Michael locked that door, since I lost everything, since I became this thing people cross the street to avoid. I cried until I couldn't breathe, until my throat hurt, until there was nothing left. Copper just held still, let me hold him. Didn't judge, didn't leave. Good dog. When I finally stopped, when I could breathe again, I sat there with my back against the cold metal wall. I'd hit bottom. That's what this was. Rock bottom. The place you fall to when you've lost everything, when your own son closes the curtain on your face, when strangers won't hire you and children mock you and holy men tell you it's your fault for not being humble enough. Rock bottom. But here's the thing about rock bottom. It's solid. You can't fall any further. And once you're there, once you know this is as bad as it gets, there's a strange kind of clarity. I looked at Copper, at the boxcar around me, at the tools Walter had loaned me, at the fire pit that kept me alive. I'd built this with nothing, with less than nothing. Maybe I could build more. The next morning, something unexpected happened. Margaret Sullivan knocked on my boxcar door at 6 a.m. with an offer that changed everything. And standing behind her was someone I never expected. Benjamin Crawford, attorney at law. The knock was different. Not James's official bang, bang, bang. Not the hesitant tap of someone uncomfortable. 2 firm knocks. Purposeful. Patient. I wiped my face, tried to make myself presentable. Opened the door. Margaret stood there in her practical coat, and behind her, an older man, late 60s, maybe 70. White hair that looked like he'd run his fingers through it too many times. Old suit, clean but worn. Kind eyes. The kind that have seen things but haven't gone hard. "Harold," Margaret said, "this is Benjamin Crawford. He's an attorney and a friend." I stared. "Attorney? I haven't done anything." "You're not in trouble, Mr. Mitchell." Benjamin's voice was warm, reassuring. "May we come in?" I stepped back, let him inside. The boxcar suddenly felt very small with 3 people in it. Copper came over,
sniffed Benjamin's hand, and wagged his tail. Good sign. Please, I said, gestured to the only chair I had, an overturned crate. Sit. Margaret took the crate. Benjamin and I sat on the floor, backs against opposite walls. Copper settled between us. Mrs. Sullivan told me about your situation, but I'd like to hear it from you if you're willing. So I told him. Not the whole story, not the parts that hurt too much, just the facts. My son asked me to leave. I found this place. Mr. Peterson, the railroad inspector, gave me a deadline. I need to pay rent or move on. When did your son ask you to leave? December 5th. Felt like a lifetime ago. At night, about 8:30. How much notice did he give you? 10 minutes. Benjamin wrote something in a small notebook. And you'd been living with him how long? 6 months, since I sold my house. More writing. Then Benjamin looked up, met my eyes. Your son had no legal right to evict you without proper notice, Mr. Mitchell. Montana law requires at least 30 days for a tenant. Even a family member living rent-free qualifies. But he held up a hand before I could speak. That's a conversation for another day. Right now, you need income. Margaret leaned forward. I've been talking to some people. We have work for you. The heating system in my office building is acting up. I'll pay $16 if you can fix it. I blinked. $16? That's very generous, sir. It's fair market rate. The last repairman wanted $22 and couldn't solve the problem. Mrs. Sullivan tells me you're an engineer. I was. Mechanical engineer. Retired. Then you're exactly what I need. Margaret spoke up. And I need help with weekly inventory. $11 a week. Steady work. My throat got tight. I don't know what to say.
Say yes, Margaret said. Simple as that. Yes, I managed. Yes, thank you. Benjamin pulled out a small notebook from his jacket, set it on the floor between us. Keep records, Harold. Everything. Every dollar you earn, every improvement you make to this boxcar. Dates, materials, costs, all of it. Trust me on this. Why? Because I believe you may have legal grounds regarding your son's actions and possibly regarding this boxcar. But first, we need to ensure you survive long enough to pursue either. He paused, looked around the boxcar, at the insulation work, the fire pit, the organized space. I did some checking, he said. This boxcar, according to Northern Montana rail records, it was officially decommissioned in 2016. It's been sitting here, forgotten, for years. Technically, it's abandoned property. My heart started beating faster. What does that mean? It means with proper documentation and a reasonable claim, you could establish ownership. Montana has adverse possession laws. If you openly occupy, improve, and maintain abandoned property for a certain period, you can claim it. But, another raised hand, survive this winter first, then we'll talk about legalities. He stood, brushed off his pants, extended his hand. I stood, shook it. His grip was firm, honest. 6 tomorrow morning, he said. Come to my office. The heating system awaits. Margaret stood too. And stop by the store Thursday. We'll start inventory then. They left together. I watched them walk away across the rail yard. 2 people who barely knew me. 2 people who decided I was worth helping. Why? I didn't know, but I wasn't going to question it. That afternoon, I fixed Benjamin's heating system. Took me 5 hours. The problem was simple once I found it. A blocked flue and a faulty pressure valve. Basic stuff. But it had been driving him crazy for weeks. When I finished, when the heat was flowing properly through the old building, Benjamin pulled me aside. "Harold," he said, quiet, serious, "you're not worthless. You never were. Sometimes it takes losing everything to prove what you're really made of." He smiled, that kind, weathered smile. "Now, make sure you keep this place, legally."
I walked back to the boxcar that evening with $16 in my pocket, with the promise of 11 more every week, with a notebook to keep records, with the possibility, the actual possibility of owning something, of having a home, a real home, with hope. For the first time since Michael locked that door, I had real hope. Copper was waiting when I got back. I sat down next to him, pulled out the notebook Benjamin had given me, opened it to the first page, and I wrote, December 9th, income $16, heating repair, Benjamin Crawford, expenses 0, net $16, improvements to boxcar, insulation, newspaper, burlap, fire pit, metal base, stones, cross ventilation system, notes, Benjamin Crawford, attorney, believes adverse possession claim possible. Keep detailed records. Survive winter first. I looked at those words, at that $16, at the possibility written in ink. Maybe I could do this. Maybe I could actually do this. Over the next 7 weeks, I turned that boxcar from a survival shelter into something else entirely, a home. Weeks 1 and 2, mid-January, temperature dropped to 35 below some nights, but I had work now, real work. Benjamin's heating system turned out to be more complicated than I thought. Took me 3 full days. Ancient boiler, corroded pipes, pressure regulator that hadn't been serviced in probably 22 years. But I fixed it. And when Benjamin handed me that $16, I had to turn away so he wouldn't see my face. Margaret's inventory work started that same week, Mondays and Thursdays, $11 a week, steady, reliable. I'd show up at 6 in the morning, help her count stock, organize deliveries, move the heavy stuff she couldn't manage alone. And I built. First thing, a sleeping platform, used pallets from behind the lumber yard, scrapped wood nobody wanted. Raised it 2 feet off the floor so the cold couldn't seep up from below. Walter came by, looked at it, nodded once. That nod meant more than any compliment. Now do the walls right, he said. So I did, stripped out my rushed burlap work, started over, loose material for air pockets, newspaper layers, proper vapor barrier. It took 4 days, but when I finished, the temperature inside the boxcar jumped 18 degrees. The fire pit got a metal base. Walter supervised that. You burn through that floor, you're done. No second chances with fire. End of week 2, James came for rent. I had it ready, $8, exact change. He counted it, looked at me, looked at the boxcar, the improvements already visible, nodded, then left. Weeks 3 and 4, early February, still brutal cold, but I was learning.
I built a water collection system, controlled snowmelt using heat from the fire pit, channeled it into clean tin containers. Not fancy, but it worked. The door was next, every gap sealed, weather stripping made from torn fabric and tar paper, cut the wind penetration by 80%, maybe more. Then I added a porch, just a small one, 6 by 4 feet, scrap lumber and a salvaged piece of corrugated metal for the roof. Kept the weather off the door, gave me a place to store firewood where it stayed dry. Benjamin's heating job paid out that week, another $16. I almost cried when he handed it to me. "You do good work, Harold," he said. "Don't forget that." I wrote everything in the notebook, dates, expenses, improvements, materials. Benjamin had been right about keeping records. It was starting to matter. Total income so far, $53. Paid to James, $32, 4 weeks at 8 each. I was surviving, more than surviving. I was building something. Weeks 5 and 6, late February brought a false spring. 4 days where the temperature hit 42. The snow started melting. I knew it wouldn't last, but I used those days. Paint first. Found 7 cans at the dump, faded blue but clean. I painted the outside of the boxcar, made it look less abandoned, less forgotten. Then windows, 2 small ones, glass from a demolished building. Walter helped me install them properly, sealed them tight, let light in without letting heat out. Inside, I organized everything. Storage area, sleeping area, a little workshop corner for tools. Walter brought me some old books. I built a small shelf for them. Found a cracked mirror at the dump, hung it on the wall. The lamplight reflected off it, made the space feel bigger. And through it all, I kept the notebook. Every improvement, every dollar, every material source. Margaret kept bringing expired food, fresh bread, perfect apples, vegetables that had maybe one more day on them, she'd say. We both knew she was lying. I accepted it with as much dignity as I could manage and thanked her every time. Walter came by at least once a week, always teaching. See this plant? He'd point to some scraggly thing poking through the snow. Edible. Tastes like hell, but it'll keep you alive. He showed me how to set rabbit snares. I caught 4 over those 6 weeks, skinned them, cooked them, nothing wasted. Coal, he said one day, took me along the tracks. Freight cars drop it when they're loading. Look here and here. I collected 3 burlap sacks full that day. And copper, God, copper transformed. His coat got shinier, ribs stopped showing. He started playing again, chasing birds, digging in snow, acting like the dog he should have been all along. Some nights I'd sit with him by the fire pit, both of us warm, both of us fed, and I'd think about how far we'd come. Then the warnings started. Late February, the radio mentioned a major weather system forming over the Arctic. Walter came by one evening, stood outside the boxcar, looking up at the sky. "You see those birds?" he asked, pointed at a flock of crows flying south. "What about them?" "When crows fly south in February, something bad's coming. Stock up, Harold. I've seen this before." I took him seriously, started gathering extra coal, extra wood, extra food. And I noticed something else. A man walked past the boxcar one day, stopped, stared, said to his companion, "Huh, that actually looks livable." First sign the town was noticing what I'd built, what I'd done with nothing. By week 6, I'd earned $197 total, 16 from Benjamin, 6 weeks at 11 from Margaret, some odd jobs here and there, fixing Mrs. Henderson's back door for $6, repairing a fence for another $4. I'd paid James $48, 6 weeks at 8, and I'd saved $149. Every penny I didn't absolutely need went into a tin box under my sleeping platform. The boxcar wasn't just shelter anymore. It had windows, a porch, paint, organization, warmth. It felt like a home. By the first week of March, I'd transformed a forgotten rail car into something that could survive a Montana winter. The railroad company still hadn't noticed beyond James's weekly visits. The town was starting to, and somewhere over the Arctic, a storm was forming. The sky turned the color of old bruises on March 11th. Walter took one look and said, 4 days, maybe 5, then all hell breaks loose. Tell me in the comments, and if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. The storm hit on March 15th at midnight. Wind like a freight train made entirely of ice and fury. Temperature dropping to 42 below. Snow thrown sideways, hitting the boxcar like fists. I'd prepared for everything I could think of. Coal for 15 days, food for 11, water containers filled, fire pits secure, every gap sealed. But I hadn't prepared for the pounding that came at 6 in the morning. Desperate, frantic, multiple voices muffled by the wind. "Please, somebody help us!" I jolted awake. Copper was already at the door, barking.
I stumbled to the door. My hands shook as I worked the latches. When I opened it, everything changed. Patricia Dawson, covered in ice, hair frozen, sobbing. "Please, Harold, please, our house, the roof collapsed, Richard's hurt."
Behind her, Richard, holding his arm at a wrong angle, face white with pain. I had maybe 3 seconds to decide. This woman had called me worthless, had told the whole town I was a vagrant, had made my life hell. She was also freezing to death, so was her husband. "Get inside," I said, "now." I pulled them in. Snow blew in with them. I slammed the door shut. Patricia collapsed, sobbing, "Thank you, thank you, oh God, thank you." I ignored her, went to Richard. His arm was definitely broken. I splinted it with a board and torn fabric, gave him aspirin, settled them near the fire. Not too close, but close enough. Patricia kept crying, kept thanking me. I didn't answer. 8 in the morning, more pounding. Dennis Dawson, the kid who'd called me Boxcar Harold, who'd mocked me in the town square, soaked through, shaking so hard his teeth were chattering, alone. "Mr. Mitchell, I'm sorry," voice cracking, terrified. "I'm so sorry for what I said. Please, I know I don't deserve. My parents' house is flooded. They made it to the depot, but I couldn't get there in time. Please." "Get in here before you freeze to death." I pulled him inside. He stared at me, shock, disbelief. Why would you help me after—" "Because that's what people do," I said. "Sit by the fire." 10 in the morning, another knock. Reverend Foster, haggard, frozen. "Harold, I was wrong about you, wrong about everything. The church roof is compromised. I have nowhere. Can I—" "Reverend, get inside before we both freeze." He came in, saw me tending to the others, caring for people who'd hurt me. "You're a better Christian than I ever was," he said quietly. Noon, urgent pounding, desperate. I opened the door. James Peterson, carrying Emma, his daughter, 8 years old, wrapped in a blanket, lips blue, eyes half closed, not fully conscious. His wife Linda supporting them, all 3 in bad shape. "Harold, please," James' voice broke. "We tried to make it to the depot. Car got stuck. Emma, she's too cold. Please." "Give her to me." I took Emma, wrapped her in my own blanket, put her closest to the fire, held her there, rubbed her arms, her hands, trying to warm her back to life. Linda was crying, "Thank you, oh God, thank you." Emma's color started coming back, slowly, pink replacing that terrible blue. James watched me save his daughter. I saw it in his face, the realization he'd almost evicted me, almost sent me back into that cold. And now I was saving his child's life. The afternoon brought more. Margaret Sullivan, her store had flooded. Walter Hayes, even his cabin was too cold. 4 neighbors, different emergencies, same desperation. Each time I let them in, no hesitation. The space got crowded, really crowded. I organized it like I'd organize a project. Sleeping areas, food rationing shifts, fire management shifts. 17 people by 6 in the evening. Then, at 7:30, one more knock. Different from the others, hesitant, almost ashamed. I opened the door. Michael, my son. Behind him, Jessica, shaking, miserable. Everyone in the boxcar went quiet. Michael couldn't look at me. "Pop, her house, part of the wall collapsed. It's not safe, and I know I don't deserve. I know I have no right, but please." Silence. I didn't speak, didn't move. 10 seconds passed, everyone watching. 20 seconds. Patricia started to say something. I held up my hand. She stopped. 30 seconds. I looked at Michael, really looked at him. Saw my son, broken, desperate, ashamed. I stepped aside. "Come in," I said, "both of you." Michael stared.
"Pop, I said come in. It's 25 below outside." They came in. Jessica looked around the cramped, humble space with something like disdain. Still ungrateful, still entitled. Michael didn't look at anyone. Found the farthest corner, sat down, stared at the floor. 18 people now, including me, plus Copper. I looked around at their faces. The woman who'd ruined my reputation, the kid who'd mocked me, the reverend who'd judged me, the inspector who'd threatened me, my son who'd thrown me out. Every single one of them had hurt me, and I'd let them all in. Not because I'd forgiven them, I hadn't, not yet, maybe not ever, but because they were human, and they were dying, and I'd built something that could keep them alive. That night, the storm reached its peak, wind screaming, walls shaking, temperature outside dropping to 45 below. Inside, 18 people huddled together, some sleeping, some crying, some just staring at the fire. The irony was cruel. I sat with my back against the wall, Copper beside me, Emma wrapped in my blanket, finally warm, finally breathing normally. 11 days and nights in a space meant for cargo, trapped with people who had treated me like garbage, while a storm outside tried its hardest to kill us all. Conditions like that teach you things about people, about yourself. On the 3rd day, Emma developed a fever. By the 5th day, it was bad. We had herbs, but no medicine. For 26 hours, I didn't leave her side, kept her warm, cooled her forehead when the fever spiked, gave her water 1 sip at a time, told her stories to keep her grounded. At dawn on day 6, the fever broke. "Mr. Harold?" she whispered. "I'm here," I said, smiling through tears. James hugged me, sobbing. Linda kissed my hand and turned away. "She's going to be okay," I said. And she was. Something shifted after that. People didn't look at me with pity or need anymore. It was respect. Patricia sat beside me on day 7. "What I said about you was cruel. You're the best man I know." "We all regret things," I said. "What matters is what we do next." Dennis told me he'd tell everyone what I'd done. "I know," I replied. On day 9, Reverend Foster stopped mid-prayer. Harold Mitchell never preached. He lived it. I wanted to disappear, but there was nowhere to hide. Michael watched everything, silent, tense. Jessica still complained. On the afternoon of day 10, the wind stopped. Walter cracked the door. "It's over." Morning of day 11, I opened it fully. Snow towered around us, white and untouched. The sky was blue. The silence was unreal. One by one, we stepped outside, weak, alive. James put his hand on my shoulder. "You saved 18 lives." "We saved each other," I said. Everyone hugged, crying and laughing together. They pulled me in. I looked back at the boxcar and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Michael tried to reach me. "Pop." I walked away. Not yet. 4 days later, a man in a suit arrived with a camera. His name was Victor Stevens, and he wanted to tell my story to the world. Fame is a double-edged sword. One article called me a hero. Another, written by the same man for $6,000, called me mentally incompetent. And the person who paid for that second article was my son. But that's where Benjamin Crawford stepped in, with evidence, with truth, with justice. The trial came in late May. Michael had tried to have me declared incompetent, paid Victor to destroy my reputation, forged documents claiming I'd gifted him the land. But Benjamin had proof: bank records, email trails, expert testimony. The courtroom was packed. Everyone I'd saved was there. Every person who'd once abandoned me was there. And in the front row, Michael sat next to his lawyer, unable to look at me. The trial lasted 2 days. Michael's lawyer tried everything: false medical evaluations, forged signatures, paid testimonials. But the truth won. The judge dismissed the case, ruled that the land was mine, legally and rightfully, apologized for what I endured. The courtroom cheered, people standing, clapping. James lifted Emma so she could see.
Margaret was crying, Walter grinning. Michael sat frozen. Jessica had already slipped out. I walked over, sat beside him, left one empty seat between us. We sat in silence for nearly a minute. "I don't know what to say," Michael whispered. "Just tell me why." Jessica said we could sell it, get out of debt. I was weak. I was stupid. I studied him carefully. "You were my son. You still are. But trust takes time to rebuild, if it can be rebuilt at all." He looked up. "I'll leave you alone. You deserve that." I stood, hesitated. "I won't pretend everything is fine. It isn't. You tried to take everything I had. But people can change if they truly want to." Tears streamed down his face. "Do you think I can?" "I don't know. That's up to you." I walked away, leaving him alone in the empty courtroom. Spring became summer. Summer became fall. Letters arrived from Michael, a new address each time. I stacked them unopened. One evening in November, Walter asked, "Are you going to forgive him?" "I don't know. Maybe someday." A week later, there was a knock at my boxcar. Michael stood there, thinner, humbler, work clothes worn, Jessica gone. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just want to show you something." He led me to a small shelter, built from recycled materials, insulated with a wood stove. A sign read, "Hope House, free shelter for those in need." Inside, a homeless man and woman ate soup, warm and safe. "I've been building this for 4 months," Michael said softly, "learning from you, trying to help people who need it." My throat tightened. "You built this?"
You taught me. You showed me what a real man looks like. We sat on the steps. "You hurt me deeply," I said. "I know, but you're trying. That matters. Can we start again?" "Call me once a week," I said. "We'll start there." He cried, thanking me. I told him I never gave up. I just let him find his way. That evening, Walter said, "That's what heroes do. They don't abandon people, even when they deserve it." I returned home, older but unbroken, knowing this boxcar, this life I'd built by my own hands, was mine. And to you listening to this story, remember this. God doesn't always save us the way we expect. Sometimes He puts us through fire first, through cold, through betrayal, through nights we think we won't survive. But He's always there, not to spare us from the storm, but to show us we're stronger than we ever knew. I learned that in a boxcar at 66 years old. Learned it when my own son locked me out in December cold. Learned it when I had to choose between bitterness and building something new. This family story isn't unique. Families break. Sons disappoint fathers. Fathers fail sons. It happens every day in every town. What matters is what you do after the breaking. Do you let it destroy you, or do you build something from the ruins? Some of you might be thinking about revenge right now, thinking about someone who wronged you, a father who abandoned you, a son who betrayed you, a family member who took everything, and you want payback. I understand that. God knows I understand that. But here's what I learned. The best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's surviving. It's building. It's becoming so undeniably strong that everyone who doubted you has to see what they missed. Michael tried to destroy me, and instead I saved his life during a blizzard. That wasn't weakness. That was strength. Don't be like I was in those first days, angry, bitter, ready to give up. Don't let other people's cruelty make you cruel. Don't let their smallness make you small. When someone tries to break you, build something so beautiful they can't ignore it. God gave me a second chance in that boxcar, not because I deserved it, not because I was special, but because I refused to quit. and he'll do the same for you, if you let him. This family story taught me something else, too. Home isn't a place someone gives you. It's something you create, with your own hands, your own choices, your own refusal to fall. Michael took my house, but he couldn't take my ability to build. Nobody can take that from you either. So if you're out there right now feeling like you've lost everything, your family, your home, your dignity, know this: you haven't lost yourself. And as long as you have yourself, you can rebuild. One board at a time, one choice at a time, one act of courage at a time. The ultimate revenge? Living well, building something that matters, proving that their rejection couldn't destroy you, and forgiving them when they finally understand what they did. If this family story moved you, if you've ever felt abandoned or betrayed, if you've ever had to rebuild from nothing, leave a comment below. Share your story. You never know who needs to hear it. And if you want more stories like this, real stories about real people facing impossible odds, subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. These stories matter. Your story matters. Thank you for staying with me until the end. Thank you for listening to an old man talk about a boxcar, a blizzard, and a second chance. God bless you all.